Okay, the first question that people ask is, can everybody do it? Now we're going to be talking about the larger reality and experiencing the larger reality today. So can everybody do it? Or is it just some? Or do you have to spend, a lifetime of meditation to get there? Those are the questions that I have. Well, anybody can learn to experience the larger reality. Anyone can become operational in non-physical reality. Your consciousness, so that's your birthright, if you will, as consciousness. Then again, yes, theoretically, anybody can learn to play the piano. Anybody can learn to be a brain surgeon or design a computer chip or whatever. It's the same thing. If you can do these things, but it takes effort. It takes a certain amount of dedication to do it. And as we talked about before, it takes getting things in the right order. Working on getting into the larger reality before you've really worked on yourself to grow and to get rid of fear and get rid of ego probably won't work real well. If you have a lot of fear and you get into the larger reality, you'll find a lot of fearsome things. You'll end up with scary experiences. So you have to get rid of that fear first. And if you have a lot of ego and you get into the larger reality, you will basically be working with that ego. So you need to get rid of those things first. Otherwise, your adventure in the larger reality isn't going to be nearly what you'd like it to be. It won't be so productive. So getting ready is most important. So don't let getting into the larger reality be the primary goal. Let it be the thing that happens along the way. Okay, so how do you go about it? Start with meditation. And the reason we start with meditation, when I use the word meditation, that covers a whole host of things. All sorts of things can come under the heading of meditation. Sitting quietly can be meditation. You can use your breath. Some schools focus on their breath, some on a word or a sound called a mantra. Some people just like to play music. Some like to do nothing at all, just sit there. So all of that I would call meditation. Meditation is where you let the extraneous thoughts in your mind go. So it's just you and your consciousness. That's all that is existing for you. You let the background go. You let all your sensory input go. You just are consciousness. So that is a really good meditation when you can do that. In the beginning, meditation is difficult because people keep having thoughts. Their mind is very, very busy. Let those thoughts go. Meditation cannot be forced. You have to let it happen. If you try to force meditation, you'll just force it away. Those are incompatible. This has to be something that is natural. Okay. You have to explore and experiment. If you're going to get around in a larger reality, you have to experiment. Otherwise, you'll never know what you're experiencing is outside of you or made up inside of you. Now, in one respect, it doesn't matter if what is happening is valuable to you. Obviously, working inside your own head can be very valuable for you too. It's not that if it's inside of you that it's not valuable. Whatever your experiences are, if you're learning from them and growing from them, don't worry about where they come from. Okay, just use them. Eventually, you will want to probably discover whether or not it is inside or outside. That takes time. It's not something you're going to do right away, and it's a big mistake to try to judge and be critical of what you're doing, and is it right? Am I doing this right? Is this a real experience? Don't ask those questions too soon. You need to spend months and months with your meditation, with your experience in a larger reality, and you may not even know whether you're in a larger reality for a while. You see, it's a very difficult thing to understand. It's like you don't know until you're there, and you're never sure whether you're there or not. So You just have to keep after it. If you get your intellect involved too soon, you sit down and you meditate once or twice or even for a month and you say, okay, what am I doing? And is this right? And is this real? Am I doing it right? That's too soon. That'll get in the way. Just keep going. Those answers will come with time. Okay, there's no magic pill, no magic process. Some people take drugs in order to get into the larger reality system. That's a very bad idea. The only people that I have talked to that thought that it was a good idea are the people who took it once or twice. It opened up their mind to a larger reality and they didn't take any more. Now, okay, maybe that was an advantage. Maybe it was an eye-opener. But drugs are not the way to go. It's a very limiting experience. Okay, it will blast you into the larger reality and then you crash out of the larger reality, but so what? It's experience. It's like going to the fair, going to the carnival, and getting on a roller coaster. Wow, it's a lot of fun when you're done, and then when you're done, there's really no net gain. You're not going to learn anything. You're not going to gain any capability to control it or be a part of it. It's not going to be yours. So drugs are not a good way to go. The other thing that drugs will do is that they will make it harder for you to get there on your own. You will learn a dependency on that methodology to get you into the larger consciousness system. When you try to go on your own, part of what's valuable about that is the experience of getting there. It's the transition that you have to really learn to comprehend and be able to repeat. Well, if you just get blasted there, you don't really have a transition. It makes that transition more difficult because you have no experience now. So drugs are not good. No shortcuts, steady effort is the key. Okay, meditation. Everything is in the approach. You'll notice the things that are highlighted there, they're all about what not to do. It's not about what to do. There's 1,000 different ways to meditate. All of them are fine. Pick your own. Meditation's just a tool. It's not a requirement, it's just a tool to help you get there. So, fear nothing, hope for nothing, no thinking, no analysis, expect nothing, eliminate beliefs, don't compare, don't judge. So it's all about what not to do. You see, being aware of and centered in your consciousness is natural. What we have to do is not some new technique to learn how to meditate. What we have to do is stop blocking, stop interfering with a natural process. Okay? We're consciousness. It's not a matter of learning something new, it's a matter of unlearning something old. Once you can do these things that are highlighted, fear nothing, hope for nothing, don't compare, don't judge, expect nothing, then all you have to do is sit quietly. If you've got all those things mastered, you just sit down and you'll be connected to your consciousness. You are consciousness. It's a natural thing. So we block it. So it's not that I need to learn a special technique to get there. You need to unlearn all the things that make it difficult for you. Okay, so what can you do when you get there? Some of the things you can do while you're there, out of body, of course, and that OOME, that's an out of mind experience. That's kind of a joke, but we talk about out of body, and the problem with out of body is it's really not about the body. You see, you're consciousness. You don't need to get out of your body. You just need to get into your consciousness. It's not a matter of getting out of the body. So as long as it's body-centered, that's a problem. People read Bob Monroe's book, and Bob Monroe in his book said, well, he just rolls out of body. So now you have 100,000 people lying in their bed at night, trying to roll out of body. And some said, well, he lifts his arm and he can see his non-physical arm, and you have people doing this and looking to see, is that physical or non-physical? It's not about the body. Let the body go. It's not about rolling out or doing anything with the body in particular. It's just a virtual body. It's just your consciousness. Okay, so we'll let those sorts of things go altogether. You already are out of your body. Your consciousness. Okay, you lucid dreams, that's where you go to sleep, lose consciousness, then actually wake up your active consciousness, your awareness inside the dream, take control of the dream. And some people ask me, well, is lucid dreams and out of body, are they really very different things? And no, they're not really very different things. They're different approaches. The out-of-body experience never breaks consciousness. You remain conscious through the whole thing. Conscious when you start, conscious during the transition, conscious when you're there. The lucid dream, you break consciousness, you lose consciousness, you go into a dream, then you kind of wake up in the dream, if you will. So you wake up in the dream reality. They're very similar things. You're just getting into a different reality frame and becoming aware in it. It's just a matter of switching to a different data stream. It's all done with intent and consciousness. Now, lucid dreaming is often done, the way they program their intent with lucid dreaming is before they go to bed at night, they program their minds. When I dream, become aware, or I'm going to do this in a dream, and when this happens in my dream, I'll know that it's a dream and I'll become aware. They basically program themselves. Well, that's intent. They just set an intent. It's all intent anyway. That's just a tool. That's a gimmick, if you will, to capture your intent in an altered state. Well, you don't have to go through all that trouble. All you have to do is change your intent. There you are, you see. But you have to get rid of all those other things that get in the way. Precognitive dreams, that's getting into the database, into the future database. Remote viewing, you can remote view in the future, you can remote view in the past, you can remote view in the present. You're just accessing data. You're using your intent to access the data. Healing, visiting other entities, those that you know that are deceased or just other entities that are out there, accessing probable futures database, accessing actualized, unactualized. So a low entropy consciousness can easily access all of the above with little effort, but none of it's necessary to evolve the quality of your consciousness. And that's an important point. Some people think that I need to do this out of body. I want to grow my consciousness, and so I need to do these things. You don't. You need to grow your quality of your consciousness first. Okay. Okay, what are the primary constraints? Fear, belief, and experience. Many people expect the non-physical reality, the larger reality, to be just like this reality. It's just sort of like this reality, but just a little different. They expect to be there, they expect it to be objective, they expect it to always be the same, they expect it to be like this. It's not like this. Okay? When you get to the larger reality, if you come with fear, you will probably find fearful things. If the idea of going out of body frightens you, some people are afraid they won't come back. What if I get out of body and don't come back? That's the old cord issue, right? They're afraid of being disconnected from themselves. You will probably find scary things. Now, the system, as we said yesterday, is trying to help you. And if you're really not ready to go out of body, if it's going to be a frightening experience that will basically chase you away from the larger consciousness system, it will inhibit you from going out of body. And what will happen is if you have a lot of fear, you'll get out of body and some monster will sneak up behind you and go boo, and it'll scare you and you'll run back to your body. And that's just a fear test, if you will. If you're fearful, you won't get very far because you'll run into scary things. Your fear will be tested and will be kind of used to see if you're ready to be there. The question I get is, well, how do you get rid of fear? If you got this fear, how do you get rid of it? The only antidote I know of for fear is courage. You have to be willing to accept whatever the consequences are. Whatever you're afraid of, you need to accept and say, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Accept that worst. All right, I'll accept that. If that worst happens, I'll deal with it. I'll accept it. After that, what's there to be afraid of? You've accepted the worst. That's the antidote to the fear. And if you can't do that, then you're not quite ready yet. You need to deal with getting rid of the fear. Okay. Remember that your experience of the non-physical is with data. It's through your consciousness. It's not through your senses, but you will interpret it all in terms of your senses. Be aware that that's just your interpretation. It's not that you're seeing monster with big fangs. It's that you're interpreting something to be that way. Where do these interpretations come from, and where does the data come from? It comes partly from you, and it comes partly from outside of you. It can come from both sources. In the beginning, just interact with all of it until you have enough experience to separate it. That may be months. Okay? Communications in the larger reality are telepathic. Telepathic communications are not like communicating here. Telepathic communications are they're not at a detailed physical level. Okay, for instance, if we were going to describe this room conceptually rather than literally, telepathic communications are more conceptual. Conceptually, we'd say, well, it's a space where people meet, it's got a certain kind of ambience and feel, and here's what's done there. It's that kind of thing. If we were to describe this room in a linear way, it's so many feet by so many feet, the ceiling's this high, it's got a rug, it's got a floor, they're this color, there's tables, there's 12 tables, the tablecloths are burgundy, and so on. That would be a description of it in a literal sense. Now, which does our reality deal with? What does our science deal with? Only the literal sense, right? So if you go to some place, place again is a metaphor, right? You go to some place in a larger reality, and you come back and describe it. And if you are doing this, you're describing this to somebody, and they want to know whether it's real, what are they going to ask you? They're not going to ask you, how did it feel? They're going to ask you, what color were the drapes? You remote view something. They want to know all the physical details. Well, when you go out there and you get data and you communicate telepathically, that's not the kind of detail you get. The color of the drapes, you see, are irrelevant. They're irrelevant to the experience. So most of that data you don't get. So it's not just like going to a place here. Don't look for the linear detail. It's not there because it's not important. It's insignificant. That's not the kind of reality it is. It doesn't have this rule set that generates this kind of a reality frame. All right? Expect it to be conceptual, informational. You get content, and the content should be informative, useful, valuable. If the content's just gibberish and doesn't mean anything to you, then you're wasting your time. Okay, the content should be valuable to you. The way we come up with our metaphors, I told you before that the metaphor is based on what's in your own experience, but we do that through pattern matching. We have to get data, match that experience to data that's in our history, in our experience base. We do a pattern match, and when we get the closest pattern, we say, that's it. So that little graph I had with the pointy star or the not so pointy star, you go into your database and you try to match the pattern. Well, what happens if you get some data out there in that larger reality and it doesn't match any of your patterns? You don't have anything like that at all. Well, often it just can't be translated. You don't get it. It doesn't fit. There's an interesting story told about the natives that were in Mexico when Cortez arrived. That at least Cortez in his logs and in his notes that are not part of history said that many of the indigenous people there at first, for the first several days, could not see his ships. His sailing ships were invisible. They could not see his ships. Well, that's because they didn't have a pattern for it. There was nothing that they could connect that to. So it just didn't compute. That's the phrase, doesn't compute. It just didn't compute. So we have the same thing. We get something that is not in our database to pattern match. It just doesn't compute. So you're restricted, you're restrained by what you know and what your experience is. So part of your limitation is your experience. Okay? The more you go, the more experience you have. The more experience you have, the more experience you can get. The more experience you get, the better you are able to interpret. You see how it kind of builds. So the problem is that people will work at it for 2 weeks or a month and it doesn't work for me. Well, of course not. They don't have enough experience. They haven't done it enough. So work at it for months and months. Work at it for a couple of years instead of a couple of months. And suddenly things will begin to make sense. They'll fall together. Your experience will grow. Your ability to differentiate will grow. A big mistake is to judge and get critical too early. Now, judge and get critical, you must eventually. You need to judge and get critical because you have to know, is this nonsense or not? But don't do it too early. As long as you're getting something that's valuable to you, don't worry about where it comes from. Put off the judging until you've gained enough experience to be able to judge it well. So now you see from what I'm telling you that exploring the larger reality is not just like going to a carnival. It's not just kind of going out and, oh wow, having experiences and gee whiz, it's a lot of fun. You're actually going to have to do this methodically. You're going to have to do this consistently. You're going to have to do experiments. You're going to have to think about it, ponder the results, get something out of it. Think of it as a learning experience. Everything we do is a learning experience. And in everything we do, the system will tend to give us what we need to learn, the things we need to learn. So you're in a school. When you dream, you're just in a different school. Those dreams are there to help you learn too. You can do things in that dream reality you can't do in this reality. So that's why we have that dream reality. It's another learning place for us. Now you can waste time in a dream reality doing things that aren't significant, that you don't learn. You waste time in this reality doing things that aren't significant, from which you learn very little. Okay. But you should waste as little time as possible. A lot of what you'll see then is created by your own interpretations of the data. Yes, the data is real, but you can only see the data. You can't see the source of the data, just the data. You can interpret the source to the data, but you just get the data, and the interpretation is yours and is personal. Okay? I'll go through a couple of examples. Most of you are familiar with Bob Monroe's book, probably. Remember one instance where Bob was out of his body, he was returning back, and he ran into this wall, and the wall wouldn't let him return. He couldn't get over it, couldn't get around it, couldn't get under it. He was stuck. That wall was a metaphor for his fear of not being able to return. And when I say his fear, I don't mean an intellectual fear. I mean a fear at the bone and sinew level, a fear that's basically a cultural fear. And we have a lot of those. He at one time reported he stuck his hand through a hole. He found this little orifice, right? Remember I told you an orifice is a metaphor for the differentiating between here and there. So he stuck his hand through the orifice. He stuck his hand into there, and he got a hook put through it. It's like he was a fish. He got hooked, he invaded somebody's space. You remember that? Well, that's the fear. That's a metaphor for the fear of that thing that gets you. You know, the boogeyman under the bed. We have those fears. That's a fear of the unknown, basically. That's a fear of uncertainty. You have uncertainty, and if you're uncertain, perhaps there's something in that uncertainty that will get you. These are fears. You will run into all of these. It won't necessarily be a wall that you can't get back. You just may find yourself disoriented or lost or trapped in a box. It may not be a hole that you get a hook through. It may be some boogeyman or monster that, jumps out at you. You'll interpret it your own way. But these are the things that you bring to it. It's your fear that you're experiencing. Well, that's a very valuable learning space, isn't it? Where you get to deal with your fears directly rather than have them kind of stuffed down inside where you can't deal with them. You get to interact with them, eyeball to eyeball. That's a very good learning situation, dealing with fear. But it should be clear why skepticism is so critical, why you have to live gracefully with uncertainty, and why just zipping around, experiencing whatever, is really not very productive compared to a systematic probing and collecting of data in order to assess what's fundamental and what is not. Okay, let's look at some more of these metaphors. The Hindus see 7 chakras And these 7 chakras are associated with various parts of the body. That's a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor because that's all we can do is get data and interpret it. Now, when I say just a metaphor, don't let the just make it sound like it's not important or not significant. You know, the light we use to heal with is just a metaphor. The energy that we give somebody is just a metaphor. It doesn't mean these tools are not useful. It just means they're not fundamental. It's the way we parse the data. It's the way we organize things in our minds so that it makes sense to us and so we can communicate to other people. Remember that series of things started with a free will awareness unit and then a higher self and then the independent unit of consciousness and then the larger all those things were just metaphors. Don't think of those as real independent things sticking up on a stick. You know, they're not all little separate happy faces up on a stick. Okay, so the metaphors enable us to manipulate the data, if you will, to understand it, to put it in a construct that then we can work with and deal with. They're just symbols and metaphors. They're not fundamental. If they were fundamental, well, everyone that got into the larger reality would see 7 chakras. You see? But they don't. It's just in that culture because that's where that metaphor makes sense. You see? Unfortunately, people tend to take their metaphors and their tools very, very seriously. And pretty soon you'll have people disliking each other because they don't use the same tools and they don't have the same metaphors. And then you even have people killing each other over metaphors and tools. Suddenly the tools become sacred, and to say something about those tools not being, what what the metaphor says they are, is blasphemy, and you have all this issue around the tools and the metaphors. So my caution here is don't take your tools and metaphors too seriously. Use them, make them up. They're just there for you to use, but don't take them too seriously. Okay, light's a metaphor, energy's a metaphor. I mean, we use those words all the time. How else would I explain to you that I'm going to, do something that's going to affect you? I'm going to send you some energy, right? That's the words we use. Otherwise, you'd say, I'm going to, there's no words for it, right? So how do you say that I'm going to do something that's going to affect you that, in a nice term? Well, I'm going to send you some energy. You're feeling kind of down today. I'm going to help you out. I'll send you a little energy. Energy, it's a metaphor for something that has an effect, something that has power. That's all. Just words, symbols. That's how we communicate. So it's not when I say, it's just a metaphor. Don't think of that. It's not important or it's not significant. It's just that it's not fundamental. Okay. Now here's a good analogy to let you understand how it is exploring the physical or the non-physical reality. Imagine this. There's a blind man. He was born blind somewhere in the middle of rural Appalachia. Never been outside of his, let's say his home. Okay. One day somebody grabs him, dumps him in a sack, brings him here to New York City, dumps him out of Times Square, and he's on his own. He's blind, never been outside of his home in Appalachia. Now he's in Times Square on his own. Okay, now this is not a social services issue. We're not dealing with that. There's no one there who's going to help him. Okay, what's he do? How does he deal with this situation? He's in an unknown place. Well, he takes a step, sees what's there. Then he goes back to where he was because he wants to connect these steps. Then he takes that step again. Same thing's there. Then he takes another step. Oh, lamp pole, post office box, something, wall. He finds something. And then he kind of goes back to where he was. And then he has to explore step by step by step with wherever he started as his center point until he can, because he not only wants to locate things, but he has to locate things relative to each other. He has to know that this is here and then that's a certain number of paces in a certain direction there. And direction has to come from shapes of objects and that sort of thing. That's what he has to do. Okay, now what's his idea of reality? Somebody says, well, you're in New York City. Now, what does he think of New York City? If he could talk to his friends back home and they said, well, tell us what the city's like, what would he say? He'd say, well, I don't know, it's noisy. There's lots of things here, they keep bumping me around. It seems to be just a big wall. He's grew up in a little house, right? And he goes down the street and it's just one big structure. This whole block. It's just a big wall, big noisy wall. That's what New York City is. So that message goes back home, and now everybody in Appalachia around where he lives knows what big cities are like. They're big noisy walls. See, that's sort of like going out of body. It's the same thing. You go out, you have to experience, you have to explore, you have to build it up one step at a time. It's not like just taking a walk in the park where you can look around, see everything. It's all objective. You can see the trees, you can see the grass, you see the pathways, you can see the lake over there, and you can walk to it or not. It's not like that. It's more like the blind man having to map out his reality one step at a time. So that's the way you have to approach the larger reality. You have to map it out one step at a time. Explore, experiment, open-minded skepticism. Okay, collect evidence. Keep repeating the same process over and over again. See, it wouldn't do for that blind man to just take off walking in a direction, because now he's always lost. He's not tied it back to where he just was. He's not actually making a map. To make a map, you have to relate things to each other. You need to do the same thing in the larger reality. Okay? It takes time. Okay, what you find that are other people's influences. Okay, what about these entities we call guides that we talk to, interact with us? We talked a little bit about them before. Guides are just an interface to the larger consciousness system. So does everybody have guides? Does everybody have this interface? Well, no, everybody doesn't really. But does everybody have this interface that wants and can use the interface? Yes, of course. It's your interface with consciousness. But some people aren't really connected to their consciousness. And they're not really interfacing very much, at least not at an intellectual level. When we talk about guides, we're talking about an intellectual connection to the larger consciousness system. Okay? Now when you meet these guides, this interface to the consciousness system, you find out that they are not there to help you get through your life, in the sense that they're not there to help you, make a better deal. Pick a good lottery number, whatever. They're not there to help your ego do whatever it does. They're just interested in evolving. The consciousness system's just interested in helping you evolve your consciousness. Now, if getting your intellect involved in that process is productive for you, then you may actually have conversations with these guides, because you can make an intellectual connection. If getting your intellect involved in that process is not productive for you, because your intellect and your ego are inseparable, then they won't talk with you, because that's not productive. It's not that they won't talk with you. It's not that they're there and refuse to say anything. It's just that interface will only materialize in a way that's productive for you. That interface won't materialize in a way that's not productive for you. So if you want to do these things, if you want to have a conversation with your guides, then what you have to do is create yourself in the situation where that's productive, where you can learn from that. When it's productive for you, and you can get into a meditation state to where you're open to it, to where you can access it, to where you're paying attention. You're not busy with your mind's not busy on all kinds of little details, doing other things, then it'll happen. See, it's not that you have to do something to make these happen. What you have to do is just get yourself ready to where it happens naturally and let it happen. That's the approach. We tend to feel in our culture that to make anything happen, we have to go out and do it, make it happen. If it's not happening and we don't have the right ritual, we're not doing it the right way, we're not thinking, we want a prescription. If you follow the prescription, it leads to this. But the prescription isn't one of doing. The prescription is one of being. You have to be ready. When you are, you have to be open. Then you have to be skeptical, and you just experience. So you go through life as a scientist that's basically just an observer. Get rid of the expectations. Get rid of the needs. As much as you need to go out of body and you really want to do it, that'll get in the way. Experience like a scientist. You're just there. You're observing. You just want to know what it's like. You're the blind man. You're just going to feel your way around and figure it out one step at a time, and you have to make your own map. Of course, this interface to the larger consciousness system we call guides. They can have independent, consistent personalities. No problem there. It wouldn't do for every time you had an interface that it was a different interface. You kind of want to get to know your interface, right? It's your own personal interface, so it can be very personal. You tend to construct this interface to suit you. If you're very religious, you may have an interface with angels. If you're not, you may have an interface with a robed monk. Or you may have an interface just with a voice because the body isn't important. Or you may have an interface with a glowing white orifice or whatever suits you, you see. That's what you bring to it. That's your interpretation, what it means to you. Now the larger consciousness system will interact with you in a way that connects with you. So if the one person in the world that you trust more than anybody else was your old Uncle Fred, then your guide will probably look and sound a lot like Uncle Fred. You see, because that's a way to communicate with you in a way that works, that gets to you, something that you pay more attention to. So this larger system can get into a religious form, can get into, a secular form, can get into a personal form. Whatever form works. And it's not that it's trying to trick you, it's that it's trying to communicate with you. And it needs to open a line that you have open. If your line is open to Uncle Fred because Uncle Fred is somebody you really liked and trust, then there's your guide. Uncle Fred will come back and help you out. Okay. What about negative entities? You can lower your entropy with control. In other words, it has to do with your mind, right? And organization. You can force that organization just out of control. Control your temper, control your ego, control these things, control your actions, and you can get a certain amount of organization through control. Well, that's how the negative side lowers its entropy. That's a very limited process. Control only goes so far because you are who you are. Control is acting, not being. Control is a very limited process, okay? Because you are who you are. If you have a lot of ego, if you have fear, you can control it, perhaps. You cannot show it, but it's still there and it still affects you. You get to a point where there's only so much you can do with control. So it's limited. So the negative side only gets but so powerful, only gets but so much capability. But that doesn't mean that compared to somebody who has no development at all, that they wouldn't be powerful. The negative may grow up this much, but there may be somebody else is way down here, and then that negative looks pretty powerful. But it's still limited. The positive side can grow so much farther because it's not control. There, it's just being. It's just how you are. You're not trying to be something different than you are. You're trying to be yourself. There's no limits to that. You just grow yourself, and you become and are, as opposed to controlling. You see, it's different. Besides, in the negative entities, they do tend to group up into groups where they cooperate with each other. It's not that they all hate each other, but you're these little groups. But these groups then tend to struggle with other such groups because nobody really trusts very many. So it's like clans, if you will, and the clans tend to interact badly with each other. So you have these little small groups of negative entities that inhabit the larger reality system. But mostly they don't bother us. They're not involved here. But there are exceptions to that. Sometimes they are. Some people have problems with that, but it's the rare exception. So don't worry about it. That's another thing that people worry about. Fear, right? If I go out there, something will get me. Some negative entity is going to possess me or do something to me or hurt me. Don't worry about it. That's less likely than that you're going to get in, say, a car accident when you drive your car away from here, or that, somebody's going to jump out from behind a bush and mug you. All those things are possible here too, right? I mean, things happen like that. But that doesn't mean we stay home locked in a closet someplace because we're afraid that we're going to get hurt if we go outside. You accept that. You just live your life. You be cautious, right? You don't walk in the street. You walk on the sidewalk, and you have to use good sense. And it's the same way here. Just don't worry about it. Yes, there are possibilities. Yes, it is possible to get hurt. It's very unlikely. Don't lock yourself in a closet because you're afraid of being hurt. That's just fear of the unknown. You need courage to get beyond that. Don't worry about what's out there that's negative. There's all kinds of things in this larger reality because it has fewer constraints. Fewer constraints means evolution packs it with more kinds of things. Okay. So you just have to explore it. Intent drives everything. Okay, clarity and precision and steadiness of intent is absolutely necessary. That's why we practice with meditation. So we can get into that state of point consciousness. I call it point consciousness. That's where you are existing just as consciousness. This physical world disappears. Now, it's not a hard state to do. Most of you get in that state when you read a book. Right? You're reading a book, and you get into that story, all the world around you disappears, right? It's not there. You're not aware that there's a kitchen in the room next door. I mean, all that's just gone out of your mind. Well, it's the same thing, except then you're not point conscious, then you're involved in the story, in the book. But you basically achieve the same thing without the book, so that the rest of the world just melts away, and there's nothing but you floating in a black void, just a point of awareness. That's the point consciousness state. That is the place to start. That's not the place to end. That's not the end point, the place to get to. That's just the place to start. So you work with your meditation until you can let all your thoughts go. You can let your awareness and senses go. And you exist as a point of consciousness floating in the void. From there, you use your intent to do whatever you wish. From there, your intent can access databases, you can go visit, you can remote view, you can heal, you can do anything else, because now you're just a point of consciousness. Now you're focused, you don't have interruptions. You don't have things going on in your mind. That's a focused consciousness. Okay. So you should try to, you work on that, and you'll get it for a little bit. You'll meditate, and for a few seconds, you'll just be in that alone space, just you and your consciousness. That's it. And then a few seconds later, it's gone. You're thinking of this, you're thinking of something else. But the more you work, the longer it'll last, and eventually you'll be able to hold that state for 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then a half an hour, and then as long as you want to. And then eventually you'll just be able to go there in a second, because you're real familiar with it. Okay. When you access databases, I think we told you already that you can specify very specifically the data you want and very specifically the output format you want it in. It can be in any format you want. You can color code it. You can put it in bar graphs. Any kind of output you want. One of the more difficult outputs to get, though, is language. Generally, you don't get it put in language, but you can. That is possible. It just takes a little more effort to do that. All right. Getting ready. Being blasted or even coached into the non-physical produces an experience, but little else of value. What you need to do is learn how to do it on your own. It needs to be something that you are, not something that you do. Okay, that's very important. So, you can use technology as a helping hand, as a crutch, as training wheels to get you going. Like, for instance, the binaural beats. The binaural beats is a technology that will help put you into a theta state or a meditation state. If you've never experienced a meditation state, it can be very helpful just to see what one's like. You can go to the internet, go to Google and say binaural beat, and you'll get a lot of sites that will let you download a binaural beat as an audio file. You can make one any way that you like. And what it is, it's a pure tone, goes into one headset. You have to wear a headset, stereo. Pure tone goes into one ear. Another tone goes into the other ear that's just 4 hertz different. That'll produce a 4 hertz beat. If you put those 2 tones in the air, you'd actually hear a 4 hertz beat. But you're putting one in each ear, so the beat happens at the corpus callosum, which is the membrane between the 2 hemispheres of the brain. And it entrains the brain waves, so it puts you into a meditation state. Okay. Now, it's not that this is a forcing function. It's going to force you to be something than you are. It doesn't work that way. But in cooperation with you, it will help you go into a theta state and meditate. So just experiencing the state is a good thing. But these binaural beats are training wheels. You need to know eventually when to take the headphones off and get there on your own. But if you use them to get there and get back and get there and get back 100 times, now on your own it's easier because you've been there, you know what it feels like. So the training wheels are helpful initially. The training wheels will be like an anchor around your neck eventually. You need to go beyond that. You need to let that go. You'll find eventually that even meditation is not a useful tool anymore because you don't need it. You can get to that same state in 1/10 of a second just by shifting your focus. You don't have to sit down and be in a dark room, have it quiet. You don't need any of that sort of thing. You're there. Okay, so then you can let the meditation go. You can let the mantra go or the other tools. All of these things are just tools. Don't turn your tool into a habit. Okay? Don't turn your tool into a habit. You must learn through your own personal experience, not through somebody else's experience. Do not try to have somebody else's experience. People read Bob Monroe's book and they want to have Bob Monroe's experience. They want to go visit his park. They want to roll out of their body. They want to do Bob's experience. That's just his experience. You need to do your own experience. People have this idea that, well, Bob was a master at this, so his experience is better than mine. His is the right experience. That's the right answer. Mine, I don't know anything. If you have that, that's self-defeating. You are consciousness. You must work from your own experience. You cannot experience somebody else's experience. And if you try, you'll get frustrated because it's not your experience. It's not your metaphor. It's not your interpretation. Okay, so that's a problem. Another thing is that learning has to be at the being level. We talk about learning. This is a schoolhouse to learn. It's not at the intellectual level. When you go to school here, when you go to high school and college and graduate school, it's all at the intellectual level. You're expected to learn things with your intellect. That's not what this schoolhouse is about. You're learning at the being level. So all of these things I'm telling you now are all going into the intellect. If you can't translate that into the being level, you won't get much out of it. You'll understand it intellectually. You can understand all the things we talked about yesterday intellectually, but it won't affect you much. It won't help you grow. It won't help you lower your entry. It won't really be of much use to you other than good conversation. You can talk to people about it, good cocktail chatter, but it won't really have any impact on you if you don't absorb it at the being level. Okay, so this is not about intellectual understanding. That's not the thing. It's got to be at the being level. Intellectual is almost irrelevant. That's why many of us have problems talking with guides, because the guides don't want to interact with us at the intellectual level, because they know that intellectual level is mostly BS. That's us talking to ourselves, telling ourselves what it is we want to hear. It's that jabber. So they don't want to get in on that channel. They're not interested in intellectualizing. They're not interested in giving you a cool experience. If it doesn't have to do with helping you change at the being level, then the larger conscious system isn't interested. It's not just there to entertain you, you see, make you feel cool. So again, get yourself ready to learn, and these things happen. You just want to do it with the intellect. You want to have the experience. You want to ride on the roller coaster. It's a hard way to go. It usually doesn't happen. So we've come to the conclusion then that the quality, significance, and value of your experience in the larger consciousness system is a variable that expresses the quality of you. Okay? So now some people get into the non-physical just because of maybe where they've been, past history, past life. Maybe you remember we said that if you grow up, your brain changes to support that. Well, if you get bumped on the head and you rearrange your brain a little bit such that it supports something that you haven't earned, you may actually get a little entree at a level that you haven't earned just by accident. So things like that do happen. There's all kinds of anomalies going on here. So things I tell you are very general. This is kind of under the fat part of the curve, but that curve goes out and has all kinds of exceptions everywhere. So there are lots of exceptions. But you can get into the non-physical just like the negative entities do by practice, 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 practice. And you can get a little so far up. You can learn to see auras, and then you can set up a little shop where you look at people's auras and tell them things about themselves, or you can learn to do things like that. In more primitive societies, they toss chicken bones, right? And however the chicken bones fall out, they can divine the future from the chicken bones. And people drop sticks and tells them what hexagram on the I Ching, and it tells them things. These things all work because of the uncertainty involved. They're just tools. Right? Whenever you have uncertainty, dropping sticks, throwing chicken bones, you have an ability, the larger conscious system has an ability to manipulate that uncertainty, give you some information. So it's not that these things are all foolishness, they're just tools. That little pendulum I told you about that the massage therapist used, it's just a tool. The Ouija board works the same way. It's a tool. How your servo motors that work your muscles when you're moving this Ouija, it's very sensitive. It doesn't take much to make them go one way or another. There's a lot of uncertainty there. So how that manipulates and moves, it's easy to change, easy to influence. Other things, there's a kinesthetic or something where you put your arm out, somebody pushes your arm down and asks you a question, and then they push on your arm, and if you have strength there, then that's a yes or a no, and if you don't, that's the other. I don't know, but there's lots of these tools that people can use because they have uncertainty, and it's just a system with uncertainty that the larger system can manipulate because of the uncertainty without breaking any rules, you see? So you can invent your own technology for speaking and communicating with the larger consciousness system, if you will. You just need an uncertain system. And then you just have to practice until you learn how to interpret it. So you can do these sorts of things just by control, just by practice. But if you don't change at the being level, again, it's very limited. So you will find some people that maybe are pretty good at telling fortunes, but they still get mad when something doesn't go their way. They haven't grown very much. So you have to disassociate this idea that the psi phenomena and spirituality necessarily have to travel together. They don't. They can even travel in opposite directions. The psi phenomena is just the way the reality is. It's the way the reality works. You can learn to operate it. So you can My example here is you can go to a great library and just read comic books. You can get into this larger reality system and just read tea leaves. But and you may be amazing reading tea leaves. I had a lady once read, wasn't for me, I think it was for Pamela, read tea leaves. And this lady was amazing. She could really tell you what was going on in your life and in your future from reading those tea leaves. The tea leaves and the chicken bones are all the same thing. So are the stars when we have astrologers. Okay, there's enough uncertainty in their system and how to interpret it. They've got this very complex system. And out of all this complexity, well, because of this, and this is associated with that, and besides that, you got a half trine and an upside down moon over here, and you get all this stuff together, and there's so much uncertainty in how all that stuff fits together and what does it mean, that basically what they're doing is they're using their consciousness. The person with the chicken bones is using their consciousness. The consciousness is the only active ingredient. The rest of these things are tools. And where you have this uncertainty where then you can interpret, you lay out the tarot cards, right? And then you interpret, what does it mean? Well, there's all kinds of ways it can be interpreted. You connect into the databases with your consciousness, and then you get the interpretation that works. So yes, people can read tea leaves and be very good at it. People can be good with their chicken bones too, I'm sure. You see? So it's not that these things are all hocus pocus and don't make any sense. They're all real stuff. But the active ingredient isn't tea or chicken bones or the Ouija board. None of that stuff's the active ingredient. The active ingredient is consciousness. Those are tools, ways to help the individual using it focus their mind on a very particular kind of thing, get certain kinds of data, and do it. If you'll talk to an astrologer, they will tell you that they get good readings when they're in a calm, quiet, they have to focus. It's not like they can be talking onto the phone and, cooking on the stove and, doing horoscopes at the same time. They can't do that. They sit down, they need that quiet, focused time. That's because they're basically getting to an altered state of consciousness, connecting to the databases, getting the information and interpreting it in terms of their system. Because that's how they've learned to do it. So it all works the same way. All these tools that we use. Gaining access. Okay, gaining access to the non-physical reality is a matter of focusing your awareness. I think we've talked about that. Sometimes people worry about, well, if I can do it, if anybody can do it, bad guys can do it too, right? They can use their minds, and so don't we have to worry about the wrong kind of people having access? Shouldn't we maybe just whisper about this and make it a secret, so the bad guys don't learn how to do this sort of thing? It's not that large a problem. Just like the negative entities can only evolve about so high because control, power, force only can take you so far. You're acting rather than being, and it's limited. It's the same. People who are very ego-driven and are fearful won't succeed in getting very far with this because their ego will get in the way. Remember all those things we said that you have to stop doing? Well, the more fear and ego you have, the harder it is to stop doing those things. So in a way, the system is self-policing. You generally don't get to a place in the non-physical that you're not ready to get to. The reason that you're able to get there is because you are ready to. So it's not a matter of, this is just, like climbing up the steps, and seeing how high a level you can get. You have to grow up and change. It's not something you can force, but so far. You can force it a little way up the chain, but you can't go very far with it. So it's kind of a self-policing system, which is good. By the time, and you don't have to worry or be frightened that you're going to get into something that's way over your head and you can't deal with it. If it was way over your head and you couldn't deal with it, you won't get there. You see? So don't be afraid of getting it over your head. You'll be just about the right place where you can learn. You won't get too far ahead of yourself. Okay, gaining access requires an act of intent. It needs neither physical, emotional, nor intellectual process. In fact, all of those processes are inhibitors. You can direct, but not judge or analyze. Just observe. I think we've talked about all of this. Of course, your consciousness, you're already out of your body. All you have to do is get into your consciousness. Your body's only an interpretation of the data you receive anyway. Forget about everything you've ever read about the non-physical reality. You can even forget about everything I've told you about it. You know, it has to be your own experience. So tools are personal, not fundamental. Metaphors are personal, interpretations are personal. Most explorers do not understand that. They come back and they report the things they've seen, and they don't understand that what they bring to the scene. So you have to take that when you read accounts of people going into the larger system and what they see and what they did and what they ran up. You have to take that with a grain of salt. Read between the lines. Don't look at it too literally. Try to get the big picture. What was happening there? Remember, that was their interpretation of it, which has to do with them personally. Venture forth. Be brave. Go for a walk in the park. You probably won't get mugged. Everything will be fine. Experiment. Gather evidence. Try to do, in the beginning, as many evidential things as you can. Now, once you go out into the larger reality and get far away from this reality frame, there's very little that's going to be evidential. Most of the evidential stuff is associated with this reality frame because that's how we find the evidence. We go remote view in some place and then we go see if that's, we got the right target. Or we heal and we see if that works. So it all has to do with our reality frame. If you go remote view, you're at your friend's house or something, and then you can call them up on the phone and say, were you just in the basement, doing such and such a thing? Because that's what I saw. You can find out. So that's the kind of evidential stuff. That's all near in close to this reality because that's really the evidence, right? We're trying to get evidence in the physical to validate what we're seeing in the non-physical. Then we have to kind of do non-physical things that are associated with the physical. But after you do enough of that, that you feel confident that you know what you're doing and that it's real and that you're having effects or whatever, then you get away from this physical reality and you will have explorations like that guy, that blind guy in New York City. You'll get further and further away from Times Square. And pretty soon there's not much that you can relate back here. There's very little evidential things that you can get there. So you have to do that first. So I would suggest that your first couple of years is working on collecting the evidence, verifying for yourself you're really having effect, verify that you can heal, verify that when you remote view and what you see that you're interpreting it correctly, that your interpretations aren't way off base. Develop your own experience base so that your interpretations get more and more accurate. All your successes should help teach you to have more successes. Your failures should teach you what to avoid. So it's a learning process. Don't push yourself too quickly. Go slowly. Take years to do this. Then, when you feel confident that you know what you're doing, your interpretations are good, that you're mostly, say 90, 95, 98% of the time, get it right, then go. Go far afield. Be skeptical. Because you don't really know exactly what that data was. All you know is what your interpretation of it was. So always stay skeptical. What's significant is what it means to you. What are you getting out of it? If you're just doing it for the experience, that will grow old and you'll stop. If you're actually getting some value out of it, it'll go on and progress. Again, don't judge, second guess until you've worked in experimental vein for months. You have enough evidence to actually be a good judge. You're a terrible judge on the first day. You can't judge the value. Okay, take the long view. In 20 years, you should be good at it. That's what I tell people. Of course, nobody wants to hear that they'll be good at something in 20 years. But you really have to take the long view. This is not just something you're going to do for a little bit. And if it is, it won't have much of an effect on you. This has to be a life You know, this is like a life orientation, a way of living. Okay. Making contact. When you interact with other beings that are non-physical, to begin with, you won't know whether it's you or them. Am I talking to myself or am I talking to some other being? That's your first question. Don't try to answer that question immediately. It's the same thing we're just talking about. Talk with that being for a few months. Have a lot of conversation. But it needs to be useful conversation. You know, if it's just all small talk, then don't do it. If you're getting things that are useful, understanding that's useful, then of course it really doesn't matter whether you're talking to yourself or that being. This may be a nice way to communicate to yourself at a deeper level. But in any case, go with it. Experience it. In months, you will be able to tell whether it's inside or outside because you'll start getting information that you didn't know. That's how you know that it's outside, to start hearing things and seeing things and connecting with stuff that's just not in there. It's not in your database, and you'll recognize it as foreign. It's not in your database. And then you'll start to get a sense of, this is outside of me because I'm getting things that are foreign to my own system. And that's not something that, you know, is going to necessarily jump out at you quickly. You may have to have this relationship for months and months, as long as it's again, a valuable relationship, before you really know where this is coming from and why it's coming from. But be straightforward, ask simple questions. Don't start off with, you know, well, what sort of job do you have? You know, that doesn't apply to them. You see, you're asking for something that doesn't make any sense. Start off with simple, basic things, fundamental things about relationship. You know, I have some questions. Would you answer me? You know, would you have a conversation with me? It's just simple things like that. Start talking about things that have to do with your growth, that have to do with the larger reality. This is probably an interface with a larger reality system, but maybe it's an independent being like you that's just out there with free will, seeing what's going on. Or maybe it's both at the same time, as you are both at the same time. You're just a part of the larger consciousness system, but you're out here with your free will, learning, growing. You may run into those too. So don't jump to any conclusions. Just interact, see what happens. Save your judgments for later when you have enough data to be a good judge. Be patient. Don't expect to have to make a great relationship right away. It's just like meeting somebody on the street. You know, you kind of start out light and dig in deeper as the relationship develops. This works the same way. Be polite, but don't be fearful. Ask what and why. Why did you say that? What's your intent? What do you mean by that? Explain. You know, you don't have to be timid. Oh, this is just little old me asking a question, and here's some, very knowledgeable entity out there. You know, stand up, ask your questions, be direct. It's best to ask questions like a lawyer. A lawyer asks questions such that the answers are always yes or no. See, because a lawyer doesn't want to allow the person on the stand to go off on their own, because the lawyer wants to control what's being said. So the lawyer will ask a question and the answer is either yes or no. So the lawyer does all the talking, all you do is confirm or deny. That's a good way to start talking with non-physical beings. That way you don't have to interpret a whole bunch of text. All you have to interpret is yes or no. So talk to your non-physical entities in that way, like a lawyer. Ask them questions that you get very simple answers. That won't stress your ability to interpret. You can interpret a yes or a no. You're in control of the format as well. If you want, a yes or no can be a green light or a red light, whatever. However the tools that you want to use. Make up your own tools. Like the lady with the pendulum, yes or no. You know, twirls this way or that way. Well, you can do that in your head as well. Interrogate your person you're talking with like a lawyer is. You have them on the stand. But the questions need to be meaningful. Don't make the questions, when we meet somebody here, what do? We ask them where they live. We ask them, what's their name, where do they live, and what sort of work do they do? Well, all of those things are totally irrelevant. They don't mean anything. And you'll find these beings are very reticent to give you names because they don't use names. We use names because everybody's individual and separate, and we name things. That's what we do in this reality. There, all the conversation is telepathic. The name is irrelevant. It's just not important. You're talking to that being. And that being is just as unique as just because it's that being. You know, without the name. Okay, you don't require a name for identification. So that's why when you ask, well, what's your name? And you don't get anything back. It's like, name? You know, it's kind of a foreign concept. But they just generally don't mind if you want to give them a name. So, do you mind if I call you Ralph? And they'll say, no, help yourself. They don't mind. So if it helps you to differentiate by giving them names, give them names. They typically won't mind. But you'll find that they generally don't. Sometimes they do. If it's a being that's very familiar with this reality frame, sure, they'll make up a name, and they'll give you a name. But don't take that name too seriously, because names aren't important there. Just like the color of the drapes aren't important there. You know, you don't talk about things like that. Talk about things that are meaningful and significant. Healing, all the tools, all the trappings that we bring to healing are unnecessary. The only thing that works is a consciousness. Sometimes we heal because we touch, we use our hand, and energy comes from our hands and fingers, and that's just a tool. It's not necessary. That person can be on the other side of the world, and you can do the same thing. You don't have to touch. You don't have to have the laying on of hands. Those are just tools. The trouble is, if you get these tools and get used to the tools, then you can't do it without the tool. You see, you become a slave to the tool. Well, I can't help heal that person because they're over there, and I need to touch them, so there's nothing I can do. You see, you get limited by your tools. So you have to understand that your tools are tools, and that your consciousness is the active ingredient, and not let the tools limit you. So we don't need pictures. We don't need, if you want to see somebody's aura, you can see it as well in a picture, or you can see it as well in your mind's eye. You don't have to have the person. Just with the healing. All of those are habits. Time's a variable. You can go forward and backward in time very easily. You're just getting into the databases, the history and the future databases. You have to be careful never to force your will on others. Don't interfere. Okay, now if you're healing somebody, you have to know that illness is often instructive. People have illnesses. It's part of what you deal with in life. Right? And you don't want to interfere. Now, if somebody comes and asks you, please heal me, and you start to heal them, you may find that they're resistant to your efforts. You may find as soon as you heal, it goes right back to the way it was. And you heal, and it goes right back to the way it was. That's a sign that you should probably butt out. You're not doing much good because there's some other reason or cause for that illness to be there. It's not just random. If it was just random, you could probably get rid of it. If it's not random, you're probably not supposed to get rid of it. There's something else going on. Now, at a more advanced level, if it's not random and it's there, it may be imposed by somebody else. You should get rid of it because now it's an opposing force. Maybe somebody's doing something nasty to that person and you would intervene. So there's all kinds of variations to this. Mostly though, at particularly the beginning level, if you meet opposition, it's probably the person themselves that are giving you that opposition to the healing. It's part of their learning process. Okay. So getting disease, getting sick, death, all of this is part of the process. And it's not only that individual's learning, it's everybody associated with them. We're not in it by ourselves. Okay, so the fact that you get some kind of terrible disease and it does something or other, it's not just you. You can learn from that. You can learn how to deal with it, but so can everybody around you learn something about dealing with you with that. So you see, it's instructive. And you can't just say, oh, now, I can use my mind and change things around. I'm the master of the world. I'm kind of God of my own little kingdom here, and I can rearrange things to be the way I want. That is the wrong attitude. You need to only help. You need to only be part of the solution, not part of the problem. This is not about being able to arrange things the way you want them. That's not the incentive. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. People have their illnesses for their reasons, for the most part. Not always. Sometimes you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? You get mugged, or somebody sneezes in your face, or something else happens and you get sick or things. It's not always a plan. And when it's not a plan, usually you'll find you're very effective in healing. You can heal much more quickly and much more easily when it's just doesn't have a cause. But those causes can be like lifestyle. Sometimes people who are grumpy or who are negative, who fuss and fume and fight, all that negative energy will manifest in their body, and sometimes that'll turn into illness. Okay? Well, that illness is trying to tell them something. That's feedback, right? They're in the system to learn, and that's their feedback. They make themselves ill with their attitudes. Well, if you take that away from them, you're just taking away their feedback. And it may help them feel better for a few days or a few weeks, but what is it doing to them? It's not really helping them in the big picture, you see. They have to be responsible. They need to deal with their own feedback. So don't feel like that you can start reordering people's experiences with your intent. You can, but that's using your ego to make the world the way you want it. You're making the world over now in your own image. Not a good thing to do. Parallel processing, being able to be in several places at one time and getting rid of ritual. A good way to do that with meditation is to learn to meditate in many different formats. If you learn to meditate lying down, you will find that if you try to meditate sitting up, it's almost impossible. If you learn to meditate sitting up, you'll find it's almost impossible to meditate lying down. We get habituated very quickly to our own rituals. In order to learn to be a stronger meditator, in order to have more control over your consciousness, and by control, I don't mean you're forcing anything. By control, I basically mean letting all that stuff go that gets in the way. You need to learn to meditate or to get into this altered state in all sorts of conditions. So if you're a person that always meditates standing up or sitting down or lying, do it differently. Okay? Instead of lying down, sit up. And the first time you try it, it won't feel right. Do it anyway. Keep working on it until you get good at it. Yes, it'll be difficult, but eventually you'll get it. Then lie down again so you don't lose that one. And then sit up. And now you can do both. You see, you've just taken away a limitation. You've taken away a ritual. Okay, and if what you do first when you meditate is you do this and then you relax and you start with your feet and you work your way up to your head and you get this ritual you go through, skip the ritual sometimes. Then you can go back to the ritual, then skip it, and eventually you'll find out you don't need the ritual. You can get there without the ritual. Oh, isn't that a surprise? You see? Then you need to learn to meditate in a noisy place. You need to get on a bus, and when you're on a subway or something, meditate. It'll be real hard at first. Learn to do it. Pretty soon you'll be able to meditate doing almost anything. Now when you're on that bus, you know, you have to meditate and still be aware of where you are, right? Because it's going to be your stop. So you have to learn to parallel process. You can learn to meditate while you walk. Take that walk in the park. Go into an altered state and meditate while you're walking in the park, but be careful, don't step in a hole. Don't walk into a tree. You know, you will start to learn to parallel process. When you're just meditating, even in a noisy room, you'll learn to parallel process because you'll hear all that stuff out there, but you won't be connected to it. Your ego will be unattached from it. It's just there. It doesn't affect you. You see, you don't, when it's that damn noise, you see, you're grabbing it with your ego, right? You're making it, you're attaching yourself to it because you're upset about it. Well, don't let it be that damn noise. Just, it's noise. It's kids playing outside. It's whatever's going on. It's conversation going on. And you're not attached to it. And when you're not attached to it, guess what? It's gone. Disappears because you're not attached. So you need to practice your meditation under all sorts of conditions. All sorts of timing. Whatever it is you do, whatever rituals and habits you have, Do it differently. Stand on one foot and meditate, you know, whatever it takes. Do it differently. What you'll find is after about a year of practicing that, you will be able to meditate anywhere, anytime. You'll get into that state in 2 seconds. You get out of that state. You can switch back and forth. You don't need quiet. You don't need peace. You can be in an altered state of consciousness working on somebody's health as they describe their health problem to you. You see, instead of having to, well, you know, tonight when I'll go into my meditation room and I'll work on that. That's limiting. You can break all those habits and you can break all those rituals just by practice. It's not easy. You'll swear that it doesn't work. I can't walk and meditate at the same time, but you can. You just have to do it. Keep doing it until it works for you. Okay, fear and negative beings, a lot of times they're just the same thing. The negative being is your fear. Fear is a kick me sign. When you're in the non-physical and you have fear, that's just like putting a great big kick me sign on you, because that's very attractive to all sorts of entities, this fear. Why? Because fear is a handle. Fear is how you can be manipulated. Fear is how marketers get us to buy their products. Fear is how politicians get us to vote for them. Fear is the great manipulator. If you have fear, you can be messed with. Lots of entities find that fun. You know, so you walk into the non-physical with all this fear, and you will find entities that will have fun with you. They'll sneak up and go boo. They'll grow up and be real big. They'll have real long fangs. You know, they'll do whatever it is, you know, that will give you a fright, send you scurrying back to your body. So you have to get rid of your fear. Often, if you have too much fear, like I say, the system won't even let you get out. It will go boo and scare you back. Fear is a big problem. It's very unlikely that anything's going to hurt you. Fear will ruin your ability to interpret your experience accurately. Fear will inhibit your ability to learn and grow from your experience. And after all, that's what we're talking about, now, learning and growing from the experience, not just having an experience because it's neat, but learning and growing from that experience. Gaining access is a self-balancing situation. You generally don't get to where you don't belong. So if you're someplace, you can handle yourself in that place or you wouldn't be there. It's very difficult to get into a place that you're not able to deal with whatever's there. Staying balanced. This is important. Remember why you're here. A lot of us like this out of body, you know, out of mind, you know, out of this reality. We think that's really cool and we do that a lot, but that's not really why we're here. We're here to grow up. If that helps us grow up by giving us a bigger perspective, great. If that doesn't help us grow up because we attach our ego to it and it's a cool thing that we're doing, and we can go, you know, we can go remote view into the ladies' locker room, right? If that's what we're doing with it, then it's not helpful. So remember why you're here. You have to keep your physical reality and your non-physical reality balanced. You don't want to get out of balance. There are some people that are out of balance in either direction. There are those people that just barely keep their bodies here and they're basically in altered state and gone most of the time. There are those that are solidly here and never, ever explore beyond. They don't have an intuition. They don't have, you know, they don't have emotions sometimes. You know, they don't have any of this stuff. They're just so solidly focused into a left brain linear world. Both of those extremes are not helpful. You need to be able to integrate all of it into one useful whole. You need that left brain to tell you which way's up, to make decisions, to decide whether you're growing or not growing. You need that left brain. You need that right brain to see things holistically, to see the big picture. You can't get out of balance either way and be optimal. You need the whole thing. So first, you're here in this reality frame to interact, to experience, and do that. Okay? You're not here to leave it. You know, that's not why you're here, is to get out of it. You're here to experience it. That's important. This is where you have your highest probability of learning things that are important in this reality frame. Every relationship you have is very important. Approach it with love, with caring. Make it about them, not about you. That's the kind of thing that's important, and that's right here. Okay, so when you go out there and you're driving that car home and a person cuts you off and gives you the finger, you know, you'll say, "Peace, my brother," right? You won't give him the finger back and call him a couple of choice names. You see, it's all those experiences here that are important. It's the way you be, not even necessarily the way you act. It's just how you are. So that's what we're here for. So don't forget about that, you see, and get focused into the mental world. Don't get focused into the spiritual world and then get mad when somebody cuts you off. You see, you're missing the point. This is what we're here for. Well, that's why it's generally not helpful to become excessive in either one. There's some cultures and some places, the thing to do is to go find a cave someplace and sit in it and meditate and do that for years and years. There's a risk there. Oh, you can learn a lot doing that, but there's a risk there. The risk is that one day you come out of that cave and you're not capable of dealing with the rest of the world, in the sense that you've learned an awful lot of stuff in your mind, but as soon as you walk out of that cave and somebody sloshes, their drink on your lap, you get upset because you haven't lived with people who do those kinds of things, you see. Those are special kinds of challenges you don't get in a cave. So you have all kinds of challenges, all kinds of places. And when you're out in the world and people are spilling things on you and people are cutting you off and people are doing this, and some guy, hops right over you at work and takes that position that you wanted, and all those things are learning opportunities. And if you're just sitting in a cave with your legs crossed meditating, those are opportunities you never get. So all the opportunities are important. Yes, the mental world's important, but don't leave this world to go to that world. This world's important too. You need to work together. You wouldn't be here if you didn't need to be here. You're here to experience. So some people will get into this, and this then becomes their life. And they say, oh, the physical world, that's just dross. That's not important, that's where all the evil, bad stuff is. I'm going to go this other place, and I'm going to make that my life, and I'm going to become a spiritual being, and and drift off into the ether. And that's a mistake. You really do need to mix it up here. You need relationships. You need to interact. You need to do things. You need to get involved. All that's just as important. Okay. You are now in the same position I was at when I first went out to see Bob Monroe out at Whistlefield Farm. Okay, you have to decide, is this guy nuts or what? You see, because if it's not your experience, it can't be your truth. Okay. So do I know what I'm talking about, or do I just think I know what I'm talking about? Is this real? Unless you have experience in the larger consciousness system, you really have to have this question. You should be skeptical. It's important to be skeptical. Don't believe what anyone tells you. Have your own experience. Now, there's a lot of consistency in that experience. Again, one of my favorites is Lao Tzu. He began Taoism. If you read that philosophy, what they thought of the nature of reality, you will see it all just overlaps and dovetails and connects to what I've been telling you. I'm not telling you anything that Lao Tzu or the Buddha didn't say. But what I have done is I've given it to you in a different context. I've given it to you as science. I've given it to you in terms of the double slit experiment, of collapsing the wave function, of understanding how our minds actually interact with our reality. So instead of giving it to you in poetry, like you get from Lao Tzu, you're getting it as logic, a logical sequence. Start with a couple of assumptions, derive all these results, and they make sense. So that's the major difference. It's not that nobody's ever been here before. It's just that this is the first time that it's ever been described logically and with science, with just a few assumptions. So that's really the difference. And if I leave you with anything at all, I hope it is with a passion to find out, to have the experience, to make this your reality. You can do these things. You can learn to heal people. You can learn to remote view. It's not as hard as you think. It's basically changing yourself to get rid of the things that are blocking you. The ego, the fear. And that sounds easy, but you really don't even know the extent of your ego or your fear. You have beliefs that run so deep that to you they're obvious truths because they're just part of your culture the way it is. Like you can't change something if you don't do something. You can't go someplace if you don't move. These are beliefs that make you go through tunnels and fly, when you're in an out-of-body state. So you have all these beliefs. How do you find them? You just have to look for them, search. When you run into a block, when things aren't working, start looking around for a belief, a fear, and some ego. It's probably there. It's most definitely there. Once you find it, get rid of it. Meet fear with courage. The rest of the stuff you just get rid of and just keep practicing. Don't sell yourself short. If it doesn't work the first 3 months, give it another 3 months. Keep working at it. This is a way of living. It's a way of existing, not just an intellectual party game. Okay? So that's what I'd like to leave you with, is a passion to go out there and find out, experiment.